What if I told you that the very strategy meant to protect America could end up destroying it? For years, politicians have promised to bring back American jobs by standing up to China. They've pointed fingers at cheap labor, trade imbalances, and intellectual property theft. And in 2025, the US finally went all in, hitting Chinese imports with massive tariffs, some as high as 145%. But instead of reigniting American manufacturing, something strange is happening. Prices are surging, small businesses are collapsing, jobs are vanishing, not just in factories, but in offices, stores, and logistics hubs. And while some cheer on a long-overdue economic showdown, others are starting to panic. Because this isn't just a trade policy, it's a gamble, one with global consequences. We've been told this is about fairness, about rebuilding strength at home. But what if, behind the patriotic slogans, the real cost is being passed to people like you? In this video, we're diving into the side of tariffs no one wants to talk about, the hidden ripple effects that threaten to shake the US economy, and maybe even the world. To its core, we'll uncover how your grocery bill, your paycheck, your retirement savings, and even your future job prospects are all caught in the crossfire. And by the end of this journey, you might be asking a very different question. Not, how do we beat China? But, how do we stop hurting ourselves? Let's start with the most immediate consequence of this tariff war, one that hits every American every single day, the rising cost of everything. Let's talk about something every American feels, even if they don't know why. Prices are rising, fast. Not just for luxury items or high-tech gadgets, but for everyday essentials, food, clothes, household goods. And no, it's not just inflation. It's the invisible tax hiding in plain sight. It's called a tariff. When the US slaps a tariff on goods from China, say 100%, 145%, or even more, that cost doesn't magically vanish. It gets passed down the chain, from importers to wholesalers, from wholesalers to retailers, and finally, to you. Let's take a popular example, the iPhone. Representative Ro Khanna recently warned that Apple could be forced to raise iPhone prices to $1,700 or even $2,000. Not because the technology got better, but because the cost of importing parts from China exploded. Apple might move production to Vietnam or India, sure, but those aren't short-term fixes. In the meantime, you pay the price. Now imagine that effect multiplied across every product that relies on Chinese manufacturing. Laptops, smartwatches, TVs, sneakers, even your blender. And it's not just tech. China supplies key components for agriculture, medical equipment, even building materials. So when tariffs hit, so do unexpected costs. At the pharmacy, at the gas station, at the grocery store. It's death by 1,000 price hikes. Wages haven't kept up. Savings are shrinking. And while big corporations may absorb the hit or shift supply chains abroad, everyday Americans are stuck with the bill. So, ask yourself, when a policy meant to punish another country ends up punishing your bank account, is that policy really working? And if rising prices are just the beginning, what happens when your job is next? Here's the paradox. The tariffs were sold as a way to protect the American worker, to bring back factory jobs, to rebuild communities hollowed out by decades of outsourcing. But that's not what's happening. Instead of factories reopening in Ohio or Michigan, jobs are shifting, but not to America. They're moving to Vietnam, India, Mexico, anywhere but China or the US. Why? Because building entire supply chains in the US isn't just expensive. It's complicated, time-consuming, and in many cases, impossible without completely reinventing the way our economy works. Take small businesses, the beating heart of the American workforce. Many of them rely on affordable parts and products from China just to stay afloat. When tariffs hit, their costs skyrocket, but their customers don't suddenly pay more. Margins shrink, budgets tighten, and when the math no longer adds up, there's only one option left: layoffs. In early 2025, we started seeing the pattern. Across retail, logistics, manufacturing, even tech, small companies began downsizing, freezing hiring, or shuttering altogether. According to former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, this trade war could cost America 2 million jobs and slash $5,000 from the average household income. That's not job protection. That's economic erosion. And here's the cruel irony. The jobs we're supposedly saving were already gone. The US didn't just lose manufacturing to China. It transformed into a service-based economy. Trying to force it back through tariffs is like trying to rewind a clock with a sledgehammer. But wait, it gets worse. Some companies are gaming the system. Instead of reshoring jobs to the US, they're simply relocating factories to other low-cost countries and slapping on a Made in Not China label. The products come back, but the jobs don't. So now we're left with higher prices, fewer jobs, and a widening gap between policy and reality. The promise was revival. The result? Regression. And the worst part? This employment crisis isn't isolated. It's entangled in something much bigger, something invisible, yet critical to everything we buy: the global supply chain. Imagine trying to bake a cake, but the flour is stuck at customs. The eggs are 4 times more expensive and your oven just got banned. That's what tariffs are doing to the global supply chain, and America is caught in the middle of the mess. For decades, US companies relied on China not just for cheap labor, but for precision, scale, and speed. China isn't just a supplier. It's the linchpin of global production networks. It manufactures everything from semiconductors and circuit boards to raw chemicals and textile dyes. Disrupting that isn't like flipping a switch. It's more like pulling a Jenga piece from the bottom of a very tall tower. Suddenly, products don't arrive on time. Parts go missing. Assembly lines stall. And guess who pays for the delays? You do. In early 2025, when the US escalated tariffs, industries from tech to healthcare felt the jolt. Some companies received temporary exemptions on electronics and certain components, but that only created more uncertainty. Will those exemptions be renewed, expanded, revoked? No one knows, and businesses hate not knowing. So instead of investing, they're freezing, holding back, playing it safe, which means fewer new products, fewer jobs, and slower innovation. Worse, the complexity of modern supply chains means moving operations elsewhere takes years. It's not as simple as just build it in America. You can't replicate decades of manufacturing infrastructure overnight. Not in Texas, not in Tennessee. And even if you could, it would cost a fortune, money many companies simply don't have. So the system stalls, products get delayed, prices rise again, and the economy inches closer to a standstill. We thought tariffs would bring clarity. Instead, they've brought chaos. And if the foundation of trade is crumbling, what does that mean for the markets built on top of it? Wall Street doesn't like surprises. And tariffs? They're the kind of surprise that sends markets into panic mode. In the weeks after the 2025 tariff hike, stock markets began to slide. Tech giants like Apple and Nvidia, deeply tied to Chinese manufacturing, lost billions in market value. Investors rushed to sell, portfolios took hits, and retirement accounts, they weren't spared. But here's the thing, this wasn't just about the numbers, it was about uncertainty. Suddenly, companies couldn't predict costs. Consumers were pulling back, exporters worried about retaliation, and investors didn't know where to run. When the government issued a narrow exemption for select electronics, tech stocks briefly bounced back. But it was a band-aid on a bullet wound, because no one knows what the next move is. More tariffs, broader exemptions, a full trade freeze, and that uncertainty, it's toxic for growth. Startups pause expansion, manufacturers cancel new plants. Even multinational corporations hold off on hiring, worried that what looks good today could collapse tomorrow. And what happens when investment slows? So does the entire economy. It's a domino effect. Tariffs shake global trade. Businesses panic, markets crash, hiring freezes, consumer confidence drops, recession looms. Former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers wasn't exaggerating when he said these tariffs could push the U.S. into a recession, because Wall Street isn't just an abstract place. It's connected to your 401k, your mortgage rate, your job security. We were promised a win. Instead, we're watching value evaporate, and confidence with it. But the ripple effects don't stop at our borders, because what America does, the world feels. And this time, the fallout is going global. America may be firing the tariff shots, but the echoes are being heard around the world. You see, China isn't just the US's biggest trading partner. It's the engine room for entire economies across Asia, Africa, and even Latin America. When the US imposes tariffs on Chinese goods, it doesn't just squeeze China. It squeezes the whole system. Take Vietnam. In recent years, it became a rising star, the go-to alternative for companies trying to move production out of China. But that boom came with risk. Now, with the US destabilizing its trade with China, Vietnam's own factories are under threat. Raw materials they once sourced cheaply from China now come with delays and price spikes. Some American firms are already pulling out. Bangladesh, another major manufacturing hub, is feeling it too. Many of its factories depend on Chinese textiles and components to make affordable clothing for the West. If Chinese imports slow, so does Bangladesh's ability to export, and millions of jobs hang in the balance. But it's not just small economies in danger. Europe's biggest car makers rely on Chinese parts. Africa's infrastructure projects are bankrolled by Chinese partnerships. Latin America's supply chains link up with Chinese electronics and machinery, and all of it is now unstable. Meanwhile, global markets, already jittery from inflation and conflict, are now reacting to every U.S. tariff headline like it's a financial earthquake. Currencies wobble, bond markets twitch, investment slows. Even America's allies are beginning to grumble. Some view the tariffs as economic self-sabotage. Others see them as a threat to the global trading system they helped build. If tensions keep rising, we may not just face trade disputes. We could face a fractured world economy. Because when the U.S. tries to slam the brakes on China, the entire vehicle of globalization swerves. And the question we now face is chilling. If this trade war continues, who's left standing and who's left behind? There's a moment, just before something breaks, where everything feels like it might still hold together. But then, the cracks spread. In boardrooms and warehouses, in factories and family homes, the consequences of this trade war are becoming impossible to ignore. The strategy was supposed to deliver strength. What it's delivering instead is stress. Behind every headline about tariffs, there's a worker wondering if their job is next, a parent wondering why groceries are more expensive, a small business owner staring at invoices they can't afford to pay. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about people. And the most painful part? It didn't have to be this way. We weren't forced into this corner. We chose it. Chasing an idea that punishing our rivals would somehow heal our economy. But tariffs don't rebuild broken systems. They just add weight to an already unstable foundation. If the goal is to lead, not just survive, we have to think differently. Invest in education, technology, and strategic resilience. Reimagine trade, not retreat from it. Strengthen alliances, not isolate ourselves. Because when you look at the numbers, the warnings, the real-world impact, it becomes clear. This isn't a war we're winning. It's a warning we're ignoring. And if we keep pressing forward without a plan, without asking what comes next, we may end up proving the very thing we hope to disprove. That empires don't collapse from outside pressure. They collapse from the weight of their own decisions.